All right, everybody. Welcome to our Friday night wealth creation course. I want to thank you for joining me tonight. If you're just tuning in for the first time, we do these courses every single Friday, And the reason being is when I was growing up as a kid, I didn't have financial knowledge. And the byproduct of that is money was a hard topic for me. I struggled with it. I didn't do well with it for the longest time. And it wasn't something I enjoyed. Right. I didn't enjoy not knowing about money. I didn't enjoy not having money. I didn't enjoy, being the free lunch kid at school. I didn't enjoy, waiting in line at food bank when I was little to get, cereal that had bugs crawling through it. I didn't enjoy any of that stuff. But the thing is as a kid, I couldn't control it. I didn't know anything about it. So the reason I do these courses is the same reason I would have wanted them to be done when I was that age and trying to learn about money. This is information everyone should have. It's information all of us should know. Everyone should be able to get this, but for some reason, virtually nobody has it. Right. And so the point of me doing this course every Friday is to share the information about money that I wish I had growing up. Okay, now I'm 28, at this age, I've become an accredited investor already. I've been growing my passive income, growing my business. I've gotten no debt. I'm financially in a place where nobody in my family's history really has been ever. And I owe that to knowing about money, but it was something that I had to really go out of my way for. Okay, so my company, Wealth Dynamics, what we focus on, our product that we produce for people is we produce financially educated and wealthy families who are navigating their economic futures with certainty and then helping build more prosperous communities around them. And the reason why that's important is because that is a huge solution. Okay, with a huge solution. This is the perfect time to talk about this too, because we have all of these, debates and politics and presidential stuff going on. And really the intention that most people have, because everyone gets really caught up in these things, is it gives people a sense of control to be able to express their opinion about who they're going to vote for and what their political beliefs are and all this stuff. It gives people a sense of control and a sense of opinion and a sense of power and beingness that someone might not have if they didn't have an outlet like this. Okay. But what I want to share with you tonight is the energy that gets directed towards this. Because what happens is every 4 years, we elect someone. Every 4 years, nothing changes. And then every 4 years, the same thing happens over again. So this energy that we direct towards politics and media and all these things that I see people communicating about on social media right now, I want to encourage you tonight, and I want to plant the seed, direct that energy towards your money instead. Okay, direct that energy towards your money instead. By doing so, you actually can have control. By doing so, I actually can be in a position where I can make a change in my life if I want to, because I have the money to do so. I can actually, donate money to a charity or a cause that could make the social impact that I think politicians should make that they're just not going to do for us. Okay. If I don't like something, I can change it. If I don't like living somewhere, I can move. If I don't like the food I have to eat, I can buy different food and I can do that. But none of this comes without knowledge of money. None of this comes without knowledge of money. Now, I grew up in a very religious family, and we went to church every Sunday and all this stuff, right? I just realized I'm not recording on my Zoom. Lexi's not going to be happy about that. Zoom is on record now. So I grew up in a very religious family, and so in that, like, money was kind of taboo as well. So not only was it something I didn't learn about, but it was also kind of like sex. It was something I wasn't really supposed to even talk about or ask about. Okay. And so that made it even harder to learn about money, because I was like, am I even allowed to know about money? Okay. Who's ever been there where, on the topic of money, you've kind of been like, am I allowed to ask? Is this something that's okay to talk about? I remember feeling that way. And I remember being in that position where I'm like, man, I don't know. I don't even know where to ask, who to ask, what to ask on this money topic. Let me flip my hat around for you guys so that the green screen is not catching it. So I didn't know where to start with this stuff. Now, as I started growing older, I started seeing the impact that money had on people's lives. Okay, so part of my story, this green screen is tripping. Part of my story, I think that's better. You guys will have to excuse my wild man hair. I haven't seen my barber in 9 or 10 months. So part of my story is when I was 9 years old, we lost our house. Okay, that same year, I watched my mom's car get repoed. My parents got divorced over finances. This all happened at the age of 9. We lived in a camper in some guy's backyard. Instead of a house, we were living in a guy's camper. And then that same summer, I thought we were camping. We were homeless with my dad for the entire summer, living in a tent. At 9, you don't know, right? So I just thought, man, we're tent camping all summer. This is cool. Turns out we were actually homeless. We didn't have somewhere to go to, but I didn't know, right? So I saw all this stuff as I started growing older on money, and I was like, all right, so it impacts people's emotions, it impacts people's relationships, right? It impacts, where you live, what you drive, what you eat. It impacts a lot of stuff. Then why don't we talk about it? And all through life, I saw that, and I worked for money, but I was never taught to save or invest. I would work and I would spend, and I would work and I would spend, and I would work and I would spend. Every night at dinner, though, we were talking politics at the dinner table. Right, the news was on. We had the good old guys from Fox or CNBC or whatever it is my parents were watching, right? But money was never a topic. And it got to the point that at the age of 17, I actually made the conscious decision to quit on money. Imagine that. And I just had the realization this year that probably most people actually do that. I thought I was unique in that sense. I think most people have made that decision by the time they're working, and by the time they have a job, they're quitting on money already, because they have this entire 17 or 18 years of life experience of bad money stuff. And then you start working, and I didn't like my job. I just had to have one, right? My parents weren't wealthy. We were living in poverty. So at 17, 18 years old, I did have to work. That was expected. It was a normal thing for me, but I didn't like what I was doing. So I was like, okay, so this is it. There's this stuff called money, and it's literally just paper, right? It's just no different than this notepad. It's just paper. And I'm going to go to school for 12 years so that I can get good grades, so that at the time I was maybe expected to go to college, so I can go to college and get more schooling, so that when I graduate from college, I can get a job, so that I can just trade my time for money. And I had made the connection that it wasn't backed by anything. It wasn't backed by gold. It was backed by no value. So I was like, I'm going to do all of this for literally nothing, for Monopoly paper. So I was driving in my car, and I remember thinking, like, I'm not doing this. I'm quitting on money. And if you guys have seen any of my videos, part of my story is I realized at that time, quitting on money, meant that I was going to go into just, life on, winging it, like financially. I would basically be borderline poverty and never have money in the bank. And if I needed some money, I could go work and get some real quick, but I wasn't going to plan ahead, and I wasn't going to take a career seriously or any of that stuff. So I got married the year after. Okay, me and Lexi got married. First year of marriage, homeless. I kid you not. Okay, we were, first of all, because I had made this brilliant decision that I'm just not going to participate with money. I'm going to quit on it. I made that decision at 17. So at the age of 18, when I moved out of my dad's house, I lived in a buddy's basement for about a year, paid no rent there. So I wasn't really building the muscle of having expenses. And then when I got married, me and Lexi, because we had no money, she actually had more money than I did. She just graduated high school. So her savings from working, part-time in the fishing, at the fishing front desk out in Willow in Alaska in the summertime, and getting graduation gifts, she had more money than I did. And I would have been working for a full year, full-time. Okay. So we didn't have money for security deposit. So the first 6 months of being married, we actually lived with my mom. Okay, imagine that you're newlyweds and you're rooming with your mom. That's that's about as awkward as it can be. And so what happened is we had to move out of that apartment. It turned out the lady downstairs, is going to sound crazy, but the lady downstairs was cooking heroin because Wasilla, Alaska. And so we moved out, and basically we didn't have anywhere to go. So we were homeless. We were living in an abandoned house for several months. And that's where it hit me. We were staying in this house. It was abandoned. We weren't supposed to be there, but we were able to anyway. So we did. And somehow the house got put on the market. They were going to sell it. So we're sleeping in this house in the bedroom. One Sunday morning, I wake up and there's these people peeking their heads into the bedroom, and I can hear them whispering, and they're like, there's people in here. And me and Lexi had like an old mattress on the floor and like some bed sheets, and we're like passed out sleeping. It's a Sunday morning. And we realized that these are the owners of the house, and that they were selling the house. And they were coming in the house that day to move everything out of the house because they were selling this abandoned house. And we're not supposed to be there. So imagine just on both sides, the shock and surprise on their side and our side. They're like, there's these two like 20 something year olds like sleeping in this house. And we're like, oh shit, we just got caught. Okay. It was so awkward that I tried not to confront it. I actually went downstairs and started cooking breakfast and I offered them some. I was like, so do you guys want some eggs? And they were like, no, you've got to be out of here by Friday. Okay. All of that to tell you, and that's 100% true stuff. That was the result of me quitting on money. And so I realized in my life that there's 3 decisions we can make with money. We can make the decision of poverty, which is the decision that I made of, I'm just not going to be involved. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to participate. And that's just that, right? And that's the problem, is that poverty decision, money doesn't stop just because I made that decision. The economy keeps going. There's still going to be bills. There's still going to be expenses, right? That's why I used to live in a town called Anchorage, Alaska. There's a huge homeless population and the homeless people steal. The reason why is because money doesn't even stop for homeless people. They have to have it somehow. They just don't work. They steal instead, right? All the way up to the upper levels of like, if you're wealthy, you still have to have money. There's never a point where money stops. So when I made the decision to quit on money and decided I'm not going to work for it, I'm not going to save it, I'm not going to invest it, I'm not going to attempt to become educated, which is apathy, by the way, just quitting on it altogether. The result of it was I went into poverty, literally and figuratively. Okay, so that's the first route someone can go. The second route is denial. Okay, denial means I'm going to do the bare minimum so that I'm comfortable, but I'm going to make sure that I know just little enough that I don't have to confront the ugliness that really is there. That's denial. Denial means as long as I have a house and a mortgage, I'm fine. As long as I can drive a German vehicle, I'm okay. As long as we have a couple $1,000s in savings, I'm fine. As long as I'm putting money into the retirement account that I don't even understand, everything's groovy. That's denial. And denial happens and works fine until 2020 happens. In 2020, everybody that's living in denial got spanked. If I lost my job and that was a problem, that's because I was living in denial and didn't have savings. If my business went under because I couldn't get customers anymore, that's because I was living in financial denial and I wasn't prepared for something to happen. I wasn't attempting to build anything. So when the tide came in and this tiny little sandcastle that I was living in got wiped out, that's the result of living in financial denial. Now, the problem is 80% of Americans live in financial denial. Now, I know on Instagram, some of you guys aren't in America. The stats aren't different. Okay, if you're in the Middle East, if you're in Europe, if you're in Asia, it doesn't matter. There's about 10% of the population in poverty. There's about 10% that are wealthy, and then about 80% living in the middle. And that middle is called denial. Okay, and denial basically means I'm just not going to confront what's really there, and I'm going to try and live life like it's not happening. Okay, so the other third option is wealth. So I can go poverty, which is like total complete disagreement. Like I'm not going to participate. I quit. I throw in the towel. Or I can go into denial, or I can go into wealth. And if I go into wealth, then wealth is saying, okay, I understand that this money thing is not going to go away. I get that. Okay. But I can't just not do anything. That's what wealth is about. And so when I look at wealth, like wealth is the decision that I've made now. Wealth is the decision that I made later on in this journey, because I realized the denial thing doesn't work. Okay. So wealth is looking at, okay, I understand that this is a scam, and I'm going to go into tonight. Money really is a scam. Like that was the thing, is the denial. I was justified. I wasn't wrong. I just had the wrong solution. I looked at, okay, this entire thing seems like a scam, so I'm not going to participate. What I didn't realize is it's involuntary. Okay. It's going to drag me along kicking and screaming, or I can take responsibility and control for it. So wealth is realizing, yes, this whole money thing is a scam. I can't just go be homeless in the woods somewhere. I can't just live in denial. So the real solution is for me to have so much money that I never have to consider it again. That it doesn't factor into my decision-making. It doesn't cross my mind when I'm at the grocery store. It doesn't cross as a consideration when I'm at church thinking about, should I tithe something? Or when I'm about to write a check for my personal development and I'm wondering, should I actually do that? If I have those considerations, it means I am not financially free. See, the problem with this is with wealth, a lot of people think like Scrooge McDuck, and then they think like, greed and all of this stuff that, quite frankly, doesn't exist except for in like, crony capitalism and politicians. The average business person is not that way, but that's where our minds go to. But the reality is you have to have that mindset of like, I need complete abundance. I have the phrase treating money like oxygen. Okay, in my book that I'm releasing next week, the Blueprint to Financial Freedom, in one of the very final chapters, I talk about treating money like oxygen. Okay, think about how we treat oxygen. We take oxygen in when we need it. We don't think about how much is there. There's no consideration when we're about to breathe. We just take in what's needed when it's needed. Okay, we don't live breath to breath, like paycheck to paycheck. We don't hate on the top 1% of oxygen. We don't talk about oxygen inequality. We don't do any of it. We just breathe when we need it. And when we're done with it, we let it go. Conversely, we also don't hoard it. We don't hold breath and like grab some breath and like, oh, I have to keep it in my lungs because there's not enough out there if I let it go. Right? We just get rid of it. Like imagine living with that level of effort with breathing, where we did have to count it. And you did have an allotment of oxygen that if you didn't have it all rationed out, you might run out of some. Right? Or if you were in a position where, there was a top 1% of oxygen stealing everyone else's oxygen, and those guys were evil trying to make it so we didn't have breath. Like that would be a miserable lifestyle. That would be so much work. Now I want you to flip it though, because we don't treat oxygen that way. So think about the way that you do treat oxygen. It's there. You grab it when you need it. You need as much as you need. You use it whenever you need to use it. You let it go and get more. What if you could treat money that way? Okay, who's ever like, been bored and suddenly you become aware of your own breathing and the effort that it takes to breathe, and now all of a sudden it's like almost panicky because you're like, oh crap, I have to breathe, and you start thinking about your own breathing. It's a trippy experience if you've ever done it. Okay, that's the way it would be with money. That's how people are with money. They're conscious of how much there is, how much they can use, who has it, who doesn't have it, how much they can let go and spend, where they're going to get their next one. Like that's an exhausting lifestyle. So when I say treating money like oxygen, that really is what I mean. You don't consider it. Okay. Now, all of this is based on the premise of my topic tonight, which is being money smart. Okay. And I'm about to dive into some stuff on money that I've never heard anyone else share before. And this is just my own viewpoints and my own realizations of almost having done this with finances for a decade now, right? So I'm going to kind of give you guys some of my viewpoints and outlooks on money and how it works. So when you think about money, okay, right now, like in present time, when we think about money, for most of us, it really is just digits on a screen at this point. I don't even carry paper money anymore. Like I haven't for years. It's, bank accounts, credit cards, PayPal, Venmo, like it's all just digitized. So when I think of money, like I don't even think about paper dollars anymore. I just think about digits and transactions. Like we're heading more and more towards that. So money is a representation. This is the first thing I want to communicate about being money smart. Money is a representation. It's not actually a thing. This was my first mistake. I thought money was a thing. I thought money was this tangible, hard, rigid thing, and you could grab it and have it and feel it. And the more that I could have, the better it was. And if I let it go, I was like losing a part of me. And so for me, money was like this very tangible, firm thing. And it was a very like rigid, like messy, if you know what that is, like topic where I was like, very like, man, this water bottle like is there, right? That's how money was for me. Money is a representation. Prior to money being digits, money was paper. Right? So when we had paper, this was like what, 5-10 years ago, we did just carry paper around. You'd have, stinky dollar bills in your pocket and you would pay for things with them. Okay. Back then, money still was just a representation. Prior to paper in 1971, which was when we left the gold standard, money was still paper, but it was backed by a fraction of gold. So then you could say money was represented by a layer of paper and a layer of gold. Right. But still, that was just a representation. Prior to the gold backed paper system, we had coins. Right. So you had different alloys of metal, whether that be gold or copper or silver or nickel, whatever it was. And that was the representation. Okay, prior to the alloy, again, we have to follow this thing all the way back to basic. Prior to money being a metalled alloy, right? Then it was just gold. At a certain point, we did just have gold. We would trade gold back and forth. Prior to money being gold, it was commodities. A commodity would be grains. It would be wheat. It would be oils, right? So it would actually be like physical products of value that people could produce and then barter with each other. Okay. And so at a certain point, people decided that these, this basket of types of items are acceptable for general bartering across, several different civilizations. And so that was like back in like ancient Babylon, you'd have like, countries that did like trading, and you trade grains and rice and different commodities back and forth. Prior to it being a commodity, it was literally a person's production. Okay. If I was a farmer, what I farmed was my money. If I farmed wheat, wheat was my money. I was going to take my wheat to the market and trade that for milk and whatever else in the marketplace, right? Now, it wasn't even the wheat, because the wheat itself wouldn't exist if it wasn't for me, right? If I didn't plant it, if I didn't do the work, if I didn't till, if I didn't harvest, there'd be no wheat. So money really is my production, my ability to produce and bring forth a valuable product to somebody else. That's what money really is at its basic fundamental foundation. And that hasn't changed. Okay, that has not changed. So this is the first thing about being money smart. Money is actually you. You and I are money. Our ideas, our work, our thought, our exchange, our communication, that's where money actually comes from. So when somebody realizes that, then the dollar becomes less important. Then cryptocurrency becomes less important, because I'm not trying to figure out how I can get these items. I'm figuring out, if I'm money, money is my ideas. I've talked about this before. If I am money, how do I get my ideas out? Because it's going to then pull in whatever the currency is. Like, it changes every 30 to 40 years anyways. So who gives a crap which one we're using right now? I need to know how to get it, whatever it is, whenever it is, right? So money is actually me. And that's the first thing about being money smart. Now, I posted earlier tonight, and it was a little bit antagonistic towards politics, but it was to tie into my course tonight. Again, this is the second thing about being money smart. Money is production. Production is me, my energy and ideas, right? And my ideas could be like on the low end of the scale. My idea could be to trade work. That's the thing. You don't even have to be brilliant to make money. Okay. Like my family, especially on my dad's side, we're roughnecks. Okay, we're a bunch of construction workers and slope workers and oil field workers and pile drivers. Like, that's that side of the family. Painters. Like, you don't have to be a genius to go dig a hole, but you can go get paid to do it, because your idea is, this hole needs to be dug, and the work that I do there is valuable, and I can get money for it. Right? That's like the bottom of the scale. The top end of the scale would be like, actual like inventions and ideas and concepts. Right? That's what I'm doing now, educating. Like, I don't actually physically dig ditches. I share concepts that help other people. When I share communication out, I've found that money flows back to me, right? So there's this scale of like value and ingenuity. And in my book, I talk about, it's kind of like paddling up and down a river, right? So if I'm in a river and I'm in it, like I'm on a boat, let's say, like I'm paddling down the river, or the stream's taking me down, because I'm in the river, it's always moving. Right. This is the second thing I want to share about how to be money smart. Who remembers in school learning about potential energy and kinetic energy? Okay. Anyone remember that? Potential energy and kinetic energy, potential value, kinetic value, right? So potential energy means my cup here. Let's say my cup has not moved yet. It's just sitting in my hand. Right now, it has potential energy. If I were to drop my cup, right, I drop it and it falls. Now it has kinetic energy. Okay, so potential energy means it hasn't done anything yet. Kinetic energy is when it does start doing something. That's the type of energy that's being produced. So the idea that a lot of us have, and we don't call it potential and kinetic, but we think that we have with our money, it would be value instead. Okay, potential value, right? The idea that I haven't done anything with my money yet. So it has potential value. And then the flip side of that would be kinetic value. Right? I have started doing things with my money, and now there's kinetic value. It's moving and it's doing things, whether I invested it or I spent it or I loaned it out or whatever I did. Okay. That's the logical thought, right? But because of the way our currency system works, there's no such thing as potential energy with money anymore. So that's why I say it's like a stream. Money naturally goes down in value. Money naturally goes down in value, meaning it's never sitting still. Okay. We've all maybe seen that movie Wall Street where they say money don't sleep, right? No dip. Like neither does my cup of coffee or this microphone. It's an inanimate object. So it's not that intelligent of a statement to say money doesn't sleep. Inanimate objects don't sleep, right? But what we could say that's a more true statement is money never stops moving. Okay, any of my fellow nerds that are watching, if you trade in foreign currency or you pay attention to foreign currency, that's a $5 trillion daily market that 100% exists based on the fact that money never stops moving. It's always changing and going up and down in value. So that's why I say it's like a stream. And if I'm in the economy, which all of us are in the economy, whether we're aware of this or not, we're in that stream. And naturally, the current of that stream is going to take us down, just like money is going to take us down in value. So by thinking that money has potential value, meaning I can keep it and hold it and it's not going to go anywhere, is actually a false belief. Okay. Money goes down in value at a rate of about 5% per year on average since 1913, which means that this money is kinetic. Even when I'm not using it, it's kinetic. It's always moving. Now, the problem is when I'm in the stream, especially if it's a long one, eventually the banks on the edge of the stream, they just all start to look the same, right? If I'm in it and my perspective is I just see the riverbank and the trees, all of it's riverbank and trees. So I might not even feel like I'm moving at a certain point. Okay, it's called points of motion. If I'm moving and everything looks the same, to me, that's static. That looks like it's staying. That looks like it's a stable, not moving thing, and that I'm just sitting still. Right? The truth is I'm not. I'm moving downstream. Okay, so if I don't realize that, and this is I'm going to tie back into the production thing. If I don't realize that, then I get pulled downstream and I lose money over time. The longer I keep it, the more it goes down in value. This is why I tell you use the sacred account, not the bank. Okay, the bank doesn't pay you 5% a year, so your money's going down by 5% by keeping it in the bank. You're literally like paying interest. You're like paying interest to keep the money in the bank. So if I'm in the stream and it's pulling me down, the ingenuity of me, if I'm trying not to go downstream because I realize going downstream is not a good thing, the ingenuity of me as a being would say, well, I need to start paddling upstream. Okay, that is work in production. That's where we're going to tie this back to the first thing I said, that I am money. I don't go back up the stream unless I start paddling. Okay, now my level of ingenuity is going to dictate how I go about that. Okay, I could at the very basic level, I don't have to be a genius. I could just put my arms on the edge of my raft and start paddling. Okay, that's trading work for money. I might make progress depending on how hard the current is on that stream, but it's going to be physically exhausting, right? Or I could say, all right, well, I'm gonna get a paddle. I'm gonna have my own paddle, and then I can start to row down up the stream and actually fight the current that way. Okay, I can use that level of ingenuity to invent something. Okay, or I could convince my buddies to get on my raft and we all paddle together, right? So I could have, that's like a business. I can have a business and we're all paddling up the stream. Or I could say, hey, I'm going to acquire a motor and just slap that to the back of my boat and it'll freaking push my boat up the stream and I can go do whatever I want to do. Right? So those are like the different levels of production. At the lowest end, I can be working. I do have to paddle up the stream somehow and I could just work. Or I could get a tool that's like being self-employed, get my own job. I could get friends in a group to do it. That's like being a business owner. I could acquire a motor. That's like being an investor. Like these are all things that we can do to get up the stream. But the bottom line is we have to get up the stream. Okay. So this goes into being money smart because someone that realizes this, they can have the foresight. Like Dave just said in the comments, he said, the harder I worked physically, the less I made. Okay, that's because the body is only going to be around for so long and it's only got so much strength and resilience. So that's a very true statement. Somebody that's money smart has the intelligence and foresight to then realize if I'm just going to paddle, I'm going to get exhausted, or as soon as I take a break, I'm going to start going backwards. Okay, is that not like what 2020 has been like? All of us kind of laxed up on the paddling in 2016 and 17 and 18 and 19 because the economy was good and our 401ks were going up, and you could freaking sell digital courses about how to sell digital courses to people who want to sell digital courses for $5,000 and anyone would buy one. Like, money was easy. Okay, that just means that the current slowed down, right? 2020 happened and bam, we got cracked in the mouth, because if we didn't have the foresight to realize we're in a river and the river has different currents, and if you look down the river, you're going to see white water and waterfalls, I better start paddling away from it, then you're going to get cracked, right? So this all goes into being money smart. Now, the other thing that I want to help people realize is this whole idea of money being us and money actually being represented by our production. This is where money went bad. At a certain point, and if you follow this back, this goes back to like kings and serfs and peasants and stuff. A group of people that realized they could control another group of people decided, hey, if we can convince that other group of people that they're not money, but instead gold is, then we could control them by controlling the gold. That's when you go back, look back at kings. That's why they have so much gold. They convince people money is gold. Therefore, if you want money, you have to do something to get gold, but I have it all. Okay, this is the invention of politics. This is why I freaking don't get involved with politics. Left, right, they're both wrong, right? At the end of the day, somebody convinced us that money was not in our control. Money turned into an object. It turned into a physical thing that we then had to go trade them our time and money for. Think about you. Where do you get your money from? Okay, some of us get it from employer and clients, but I'm saying like big money. Most of us go to the bank. When we want money, we go to the bank. Okay, we have to jump through whatever hoops the bank convinces us to jump through, no matter how good we are at our business, no matter how good of a producer we are, no matter how good at money we are, we've got to jump through the bank's hoops if we want to get their money, right? Now, the thing is the bank's not giving you their money. The bank is giving you everyone else's deposits, right? So what happened is this group of people convinced everyone else in the populace that money is an object and that money is not our own production, and that if we want money, we need to go get the object from them. And then they could create scarcities and abundances of that object based on how they want us to behave. Thus, we have government and the economy, right? I don't really get involved in the economy. Someone said 2020 was my best year ever. Dave said that. Same with me. And it's for the sole reason that I don't believe that anyone else has money. I don't believe the bank has my money. I don't believe a politician has my money. I don't believe the government has my money. I realize I am my money. By going out and producing, I can go get whatever I need. Therefore, I don't need to have a bad year. Just because 2020 happened and we had this whole COVID scare doesn't mean that I can't go produce. Doesn't mean that my ingenuity went away. It doesn't mean that I can't work. It doesn't mean that my creativity disappeared. Like, that's all a personal choice. But the thing is I can't have the viewpoint that it's a personal choice if I don't first have the viewpoint that the money starts with me, not with them. Okay. So I posted earlier tonight, and again, I want to tie this in too. I posted earlier tonight on Facebook. We're all getting super into the politics thing. The average American has a $97,000 net worth, including their house. Okay. Not to get political. I don't care who wins or loses. I don't think the country's going to change one bit either way. Joe Biden has a $9 million net worth. That puts him in the top 1% of net worths in the country. Okay. Donald Trump has a $3 billion net worth. That puts him in the top 1% of net worth in the country. So we have 330 million people, give or take, fighting over which top 1%er is going to rule them for the next 4 years. Guys, that's not how wealth is built. Like all politics aside, look at, they are both top 1%ers. There's this thing I live by called look, don't listen. I don't care what you say. I watch what you do. I don't watch the debate. I don't vote for these guys. I don't do any of this stuff, but I watch what they do. Okay. And I can see they both have top 1% net worths. They got their money right. Regardless of what social issue they're going to talk about or campaign on, they got their money right. So for me to not do that first when they did it first is foolish because it's what they did. So I'm not going to vote for which one of them is going to be the manager of my country for the next 4 years. I'm going to look at, how do I become my own president? How do I become in more control of my own life? Right. And it starts with, as represented by their excellent example, get into the top 1% of net worth. $10 million. That's the top 1% number. Now, that's a realization that I had once I became money smart. Okay. I realized, okay, there's regardless of all this stuff, like there's still an economy, there's still taxes, there's still bills. Okay. 2020, we printed trillions of dollars and reduced interest rates. We're going to pay for that in future taxes. I guarantee you taxes are going to go up because of that. Now, if I'm not money smart, I might listen to Joe Biden, who says I'm going to raise taxes on the rich, or I might listen to Donald Trump, who says I'm going to give you tax breaks and make sure that we lower the rate. The non-money smart person would make a decision based on either one of those pitches, because those are both just sales pitches. They would say, oh, those rich people, let's vote for Biden. We want to tax them more because I think they should pay more. Or you're going to say, well, I'm a capitalist, I'm going to vote for Trump because he's going to lower taxes. Guys, the guys at the top, they don't freaking pay the taxes anyways. Like you saw Donald Trump's tax return. More power to him. $750. Mine has been zero because I know how to. I don't pay income tax because I don't receive income. I know how to work the tax code. Okay. And this again comes with being money smart. I can't have that. Like when you realize that that's really just a pitch and the rich people aren't going to pay the taxes anyways, and the middle class and the poor are because they don't understand the tax code, not because of who's president, but because there's a law called the Internal Revenue Code that actually dictates all of the tax do's and don'ts. And if you know that thing, you can use it and pay no taxes. And you don't have to be wealthy. I talked to a client of mine 3 or 4 days ago. They make maybe 6 figures a year, which is not bad, but they're not wealthy by any means. I helped them pay 0 taxes this year. They're going to literally pay $0 in taxes because of the way that I helped them with their tax planning, because I know the tax code and I helped them understand it and apply it to their lives. Okay, so they now realize I don't have to look for a politician to help me pay less in taxes or make those guys pay more, because the politician doesn't actually have any control over it. It's the individual and their own knowledge on how to use the tax code. And it's not just the tax code, it's money across the board, guys. Across the board. The tax code works that way. Investing works that way. Like there's some things in my book that I just can't wait for you guys to read. When you read it, it's going to blow your mind on how most of this stuff came into being. When I say most of this stuff, I mean things like the Federal Reserve Bank and the tax code and the Securities Exchange Commission and all of these government entities that are like the powerhouses of finance and wealth in our country. So you're going to learn like how they came into being, right? So when you learn how they came into being, you're going to realize most of these were created by a mix of politicians and wealthy business owners that decided to go into business together against you guys. Right? They have constituents and they have employees, same market, right? So if they can get in business together, like imagine how much control they could have, because their market is the same individual. Why would they compete when they can collaborate and control? Right? So being money smart is the key to all of this stuff. So we have this idea of money is actually me and it's my own production. We have this idea that it's always going down in value and that the way that I'll produce it is either working or using tools or ingenuity or inventing or acquiring in order to get up the stream. We have this idea that there are a group of people who fully intend to convince me that I can't control my money because they want me to think they have my money so that I'm subservient to them. Right? When they really just hold all the representations of money. When you think about even just the progression of that, we talked about how we used gold and silver, and then we used paper money backed by gold and silver. And then eventually we just used paper and now we're on digits. The reason behind that is because it hinders reproduction. Okay. When we used gold and silver, like granted, most of the wealthy people had all the gold and silver, right? But anyone could go mine it. I have a client right now that's looking at buying a gold mine. So if I'm a group trying to control the currency supply and I'm like, all right, well, I can't control it if they can just go get it from anywhere and it's not just stuck with me, then I need to cut off and get to something that they can't just go get anywhere. So at a certain point, like my hometown state, Alaska, was a gold rush state. People would go up there and they'd mine for gold. So if gold was currency, that means that you didn't have to go to the bank. You could just go to Alaska or California or Oregon, wherever mining was happening. You could go mine your own gold and you could go produce your own wealth, which is actually very similar to the first thing we said, where if I was a farmer, I could produce my own wheat. If I could mine and get my own gold, then I was again producing my own wealth. So banks didn't like that because it made it to where people couldn't be stuck with the bank. They had other options. So then we went to a paper-based system where gold was only fractional. Still, though, gold could be gotten anywhere. In the 1930s, our government actually outlawed gold. They said it's illegal to own gold in the United States. They demonized it. But they still used it, right? Again, the rich old white guys in office, you guys can't use gold, it's bad. But then the central banks and the entire financial system, which is run and owned by these guys, they're still using it and holding it. They just don't want us to have it. So then in 1971, we entirely left the gold standard altogether. Then we went to paper. The idea was, well, if you print paper, that's counterfeiting. If you go gold mining, it's not counterfeiting. That's not illegal, even though you shouldn't own gold, but it's still like not illegal to go mine for gold. But if we make it just paper, then it is illegal, right? Now, the problem is with paper, it's still something that you could counterfeit. There's problems with counterfeit bills. There's still liquidity issues with banks where everyone tried to pull their money out of the bank right now. The bank does not have that money and it would crash the financial system. So now we're switching to digits, because if it's digits, you can't reproduce a digit. It's either that digit or not. That's like Bitcoin in the blockchain. Like you would know for sure if someone started reproducing it, right? The other thing with digits is you can't withdraw them. There's no more liquidity issue for the banks. So when you start watching all of this stuff and the way it's progressing, it's happening in a way that we're losing control of finances because we're not money smart. We don't understand, I am the money. I am the means of production. I am the reason the production happens. I am the thing that creates the wheat or the gold or the job or the service or the product or whatever the thing is that's valuable that brings the money in. So I've got to have the viewpoint that I am the money, not that stuff. Now, that stuff out there is literally just an idea, right? It's a medium, like a thing we use, like we talked about. It's a representation of value. It's like a coupon, right? It's an idea that's backed by confidence. And then we exchange it with one another, right? So if you think about a transaction, and this is the other thing I want to talk about. We talked about kinetic energy and potential energy. The other thing I want to talk about, and this is in the final chapter of my book, is producers and consumers. Okay, I don't believe in political parties. I don't believe in socioeconomic statuses. I believe in producers and consumers. There are producers in this world and there are consumers in this world, period. Right? There always has been, always will be. 100 years from now, when Democrat and Republic goes away and we have whatever we have next, there will still be producers and consumers, right? Producers are those that they produce value. They realize I am the money. I'm going to produce, I'm going to bring forth, I'm going to create a product, a service, something of value. That's a producer. Okay. The consumer is the person that buys, right? So in an exchange, let's pretend this is my producer. This is my consumer, right? The producer, they have something of value that they're going to exchange with the consumer for the consumer's money, whether that money is a paper dollar or it's Bitcoin or it's gold or it's corn. It doesn't matter what it is, right? The producer is going to produce a product, service, idea that the consumer wants, and the consumer is going to willingly exchange that to the producer. Okay. This is key. The producer will always rule the world because they're always going to end up getting the money from the consumer, because if money is just me and a product, then it's limitless. I can't run out of money because I'd never run out of ideas and work that I can do and creativity and ingenuity. Like that's limitless. It's an unlimited amount that I can create and produce. Now the consumer, this guy over here, on the other hand, if he's not producing more than he's consuming, he will run out because he's spending more than he's actually creating. Right? This is where the average American is right now. America has become a country of consumers. We buy instead of produce, right? So in this thing of producers and consumers, we talked about kinetic energy. Money is always moving, right? It depends also on who it's moving from and who it's moving to. Okay, money can be kinetic for the consumer in the sense that it's leaving him, right? But it's going to the producer. It's kinetic to the producer because it's coming to him. So the other thing to realize is if I want more money, I have to be a producer. And you'll see online today all of this marketing and advertising about, become a salesperson or do e-commerce or get into Forex, whatever it might be. No. The first thing that you need to do, and the first thing I need to do, is I need to become a producer, not a salesperson, not an e-commerce store owner, not a social media influencer. Like those are all just like isms, like they're versions of a producer, but I need to become a producer. A producer, you can fricking stick a producer in any single role in any single city in any single country, and they will produce and go get money because they're a producer. It doesn't matter if they're doing, shoveling holes in the ground, or if they're selling a product, or if they're trading Forex, or if they're doing real estate, or they're doing Bitcoin, or they're running an e-commerce store. They are freaking producing. Like in their blood, they produce, and they always have, and they always will. Now, the problem, and this is where wealth inequality shows up, which is something that gets talked about a lot today. It's actually a misunderstanding of the representation of the producer and the consumer. The consumer is willingly giving his money to the producer. At a certain point, the consumer will run out and the producer will end up with all the money. Now, by nature, the producer is not a consumer, which means they get it and they also keep it. So they're going to end up getting all of the money and keeping all of the money, and the consumer at some point will run out. And then it's going to look like the wealth gap, the 1% and the bottom 99. No. That's because the 1% are that much more into production, getting the money, getting it. Where are they getting it from? Well, they're getting it from the consumers. Right? So what I'm saying is by all ethical and legal means and moral means, be a producer. Okay, we could literally, guys, this is not something I've proven, but this is my hypothesis. Like, I think we could confiscate, the wealth and increase the taxes and take all the money from the producers and redistribute it to the consumers. And guess what? In a matter of years, the producers would have it all back again. It doesn't matter. Like the producers are going to produce and get the money back. So someone that is money smart is going to have the viewpoint in every transaction. This is important. Am I being a producer right now, or am I being a consumer? Okay, everything is linked to this. Guess what? Producers get the tax deductions. You guys, and even I kind of did too, made fun of Donald Trump writing off 70 grand of haircuts. Well, that's because when he was getting those haircuts, he was being a producer. Producers get the tax write-offs, dude. It's not fair. It's the tax code. It's there. Use it, right? Now, if I'm just a consumer and I walk into the salon, and I'm like, well, I'm going to get a haircut and I'm just going to chill. And this is just, for self-care reasons. And I haven't had a haircut in months. I shouldn't be talking about haircuts, but like they're not going to be able to write off their haircuts. In Alaska, I wrote off my haircuts. Why? Because my buddy, Sean, also my barber, was a client of mine. And every time I went to his shop, I serviced him. I wrote off every single haircut I took there because that was business, right? No different than me going out and getting a meal and taking a prospect out to a meal. No different than me marketing and spending money on marketing. It's the production mode and mindset. If I'm a producer, I'm going to earn money. I'm going to get tax benefits. I'm going to have opportunities. If I'm a consumer, I'm not going to have any of those things because I'm not a producer. I didn't make these rules, and I don't think anyone made these rules. I think that these are just like laws of nature, right? In the wild, AJ, I know you like that, man. You've met Sean too, AJ. Sean was in Miami with us. So in the wild, we have predators and prey. Okay. And I don't think that it's a full translation of producer, consumer is predator, prey. I don't think that it's predatory in any way, but even in nature, we have one species that goes after the other species runs from the one species. It's the same type of interaction, right? So like it's a law of nature. There's a producer and there's a consumer, and I have to be aware. Money is always going down in stream. It's going down in value. That's the first rule of being money smart. First rule, money always goes down in value, and it does it at a rate of about 5% a year. Okay. Second, I have to swim upstream. I've got to paddle upstream, and there's different ways I can do that. And it doesn't matter. Nobody's wrong for paddling. If you're like, dude, I don't have the skills, I'm just going to work. I have a client here in LA or in California, Scotty. Scotty right now works probably 100 hours a week doing construction. Okay. So he's not like buying the motor right now or like hiring the team. He's freaking paddling. and he's a workhorse and he makes like 200 grand a year doing that. And he's in better financial shape than some of the people I know that are self-employed. So there's no shame on like, hey, I'm just a workhorse. You've got to get upstream somehow. So that's rule number 2. You've got to paddle upstream. Rule number 3, there's a group that's going to convince you that you don't know how to paddle, that you can't do it, that you have to rely on them. That's called the government. Doesn't matter if it's the right side or the left side. They're both working for the same people, right? So you have to realize that, like rule number 3, I am in control of whether my boat goes upstream or downstream, not them. I am the money, right? And then rule number 4, I have to realize that I'm either being a producer or I'm being a consumer. And rule number 4 is going to be predicated on the prior thing that I just said, realizing I am in control of the money. By doing this stuff, I can become money smart. And I want to just paint the picture for you guys, because like, I really do think that money is something that in today's modern culture, we're just not as educated up on. Like when you go back, and I study these people for fun, John Rockefeller, JP Morgan, Andrew Carnegie, like the Rothschilds, it's the wealthiest families in history. And the commonality that I saw, especially with Morgan, Rockefeller, and Carnegie, is as kids, they learned about money. As kids, they learned about money. I did not learn about money as a kid. Okay. So John Rockefeller, like, I don't even know how he got into the mindset of it. He actually in business started as an accountant, but if you read his biography, it actually talks about at the age of like 15 or 16, he would actually carry a notepad in his pocket with a pen, and he would log his transactions during the day. So there's a story where he took a girl out on a date and he bought her like a 15-cent soda. On the freaking date, this boy busts his notepad out and writes the expense down on the notepad on his ledger. Okay. That is a form of financial education. At 15 years old, he was doing that. Okay. At 15, I didn't know any of that stuff. I think kids today at 15 know even less about money at that age. Okay. Andrew Carnegie, another excellent example. And Andrew Carnegie is my favorite. Andrew Carnegie died penniless, guys. He, during his life, he was the wealthiest man in the world. Him and Rockefeller competed back and forth for that position. Carnegie, when his goal, because he was a Scottish immigrant, he grew up in extreme poverty. That's how he learned about money. When he was freaking 6, 7, 8 years old, he actually had to go get a job to support his mom and dad and his brothers. That's a financial education. That's not a fun financial education, but that's a financial education. At that age, he was learning you have to swim upstream. You have to produce. I've got to help mom pay the bills. I've got to bring money into the household, right? So his goal was to become wealthy and then give all of it away. He did that. It gives me freaking chills just to talk about that. Like the guy in today's net worth would have been worth over $300 billion. He gave every penny of it away when he died. I think he left a house and like 100 grand to his wife and daughter. Everything else he gave away. Like you can't help but just admire that, right? But the guy as a kid, he learned about money. JP Morgan, his dad was a banker. When he was a little boy, he in England, he was taken to a bank where he saw physically, like in front of him, over £1 million British pounds in gold. He was learning about money, guys. So when I talk about money smart, like we look at it as like this thing of like, oh, it's arrogant and it's cocky and you talk about money too much and it's taboo. No, guys, 7 and 8 and 9 and 10-year-old boys were learning about money at that age, not even 200 years ago, learning things today that adults don't even know. Okay. So this is the importance of being money smart. If you do not spend time on it, like again, the produce thing, if I don't produce education about money, I can't expect it to show up. Okay, if all I consume is CNN and Fox News and Twitter and Instagram and freaking what else, Joe Rogan and Cardi B and all this social stuff going on today, like I can't expect money to show up in my life. That's not how it works. Right? Now, if I go learn about money and I become financially educated and literate, then I could justifiably expect money to show up in my life because that's what I spend my time learning about. Right. And again, it's one of those things that I want to communicate to you guys at the age of 28, being able to do what I've done and achieve what I've achieved. And I'm going to keep going. But to be able to do all of this is like, it's a hard feeling to describe, but it's just gratifying. Like it gives you a certain confidence about life. It makes you feel like you're in control. It actually gives you means and options and abilities. right? So what I'm saying is dedicate time to this stuff, guys. Like, just think about, like, what if I knew about taxes? What if I knew about investing? What if I knew about income? What if I knew about banking? What if I knew about credit? What, like, all of this stuff that people struggle with, you don't have to struggle with it. Like, in my opinion, the number one and number two things to know about in life, A, is spirituality, B, is money. Those are the top two things I think everyone should learn about. Now, ironically, those are the two things nobody learns about. You don't learn about spirituality in school. You don't learn about money in school. Okay, the third one you should learn about is nutrition. You don't learn about that in school either. You think that's just the coincidence? Like, come on. So, and I don't want to get into too many rabbit trails here, but guys, like, learning about money and becoming financially educated should be something that we all strive toward. And it's not a destination. It really is one of those things that's a journey, which is hard for me because I'm a destination guy. I like getting to the end goal. I like getting to the target. I don't like the journey. Like, when I'm doing stuff, I'm like, is this done yet? I want to be finished so I can get to the next thing. Money's not one of those things. It's like working out, right? Like, you're just always going to work out, or eating right. You're just always going to eat right, or having a relationship with your spouse. You're just always going to have a relationship with your spouse. There might be different levels to it, but there's never like a pinnacle where you can be like, I'm done. Right. So if you're the same as me, where you're like, man, I really don't like the journey thing and I love destinations, like, you kind of have to get used to that with money and realize that money is a journey. You're going to spend time on it. Now, my book is coming out in the next week. It's called The Blueprint of Financial Freedom. Okay. It's 154 pages, and it literally goes from the end goal of wealth. It paints that picture first, because I think it's important that we all understand what that is and what it looks like, so we can know why we're going to get there. We have to have a comparable magnitude, life today versus what it could be. Wealth is what life could be, right? And what I did in that book is I reverse engineered every single step you would need to take to build real wealth. Okay, when I say real wealth, that is literally and mathematically defined as passive income that exceeds your savings, expenses, and taxes. That should be the goal for everybody. Why? Because at that point, I'm not trading time for money anymore. That's the equivalent of on the river, slapping a motor to the boat, and the boat's now on autopilot, and I can live my life the way I want to because I don't have to paddle anymore. That's what financial freedom is all about, right? So this book walks backwards on, let's start with that as the end goal. Let's paint that picture, and then let's look at every single step prior. What would we have to do prior to each of those steps? All the way down to the first step of, how do I even just understand money? Okay. And as I was writing this book, like, I did a lot of research, and I realized, like, stuff I've realized before, but I was just brought back to looking at it again. Like, right now, the average American is not doing well financially. Okay. 80% of America is living paycheck to paycheck. 60% of Americans have less than $1,000 in the bank. Okay. The average American with credit card debt has, like, I think 13 or 15,000, of which Alaska is actually number one per capita. The average American has like $180,000 in debt, right? Debt to income ratios for, like, the average American household is like 20 to 30%. The savings rate has plummeted. Granted, it's come up a little bit during COVID, but right now, like, the average American is in a very poor financial position. And it was exemplified and exaggerated during 2020 for most people, right? Warren Buffett has this quote saying, when the tide comes out, you can see who's been swimming with no shorts on. That happened in 2020. We saw everybody that financially wasn't wearing shorts. Okay. And what I realized as I was writing this book is, because I've been there. I've been in a position where I had, debt. I had not enough income. I had, all of these things going on in my life, negative relating to finances. But when I got my first job, I had no debt, which means I actually started solvent. I started with more income than I had expenses. I started with more assets than I had liabilities. I started at a surplus because of my own knowledge or lack of and behavior. That brought me down. Then I ended up having debt. Then I ended up being at a deficit. Then I ended up with problems. And for most people, that's where you started too. None of us started really behind the eight ball. When you graduated high school, you didn't have debt. You got your first job, you had a paycheck, you didn't have a bunch of fixed expenses, you had a surplus. But because we didn't know about money and we didn't have money smarts, we got ourselves in a position of borrowing and not being able to repay it, and then having massive debt, and then not saving, and then repeating that cycle. So what I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and open this up for questions really quick. I know I went over, but this is a topic I'm very passionate about because it's what I do. At the end of the day, like financial education is what I'm passionate about. So I'm going to answer some questions here. Let me check Instagram out first because they have an expiration of like an hour. And then I think the live stream gets shut down. Thank you guys all for joining tonight too. I know it's a Friday. I had a client text me, a relatively new client text me tonight, and they were like, why do you do courses on Fridays? On Fridays, I like going out and having wine and hanging out with my friends. And I told her that's why we do courses on Fridays. Okay. On Fridays, everyone else goes out. Oh, Instagram just got shut off. On Fridays, everyone else goes out. And for the people that this stuff matters to, they didn't. They stayed in and they watched this. And that's why we do courses on Fridays. It separates those who care about money and finances from those who, on a Friday, they're going to go out and party instead. Okay, let's see what we have on questions on Facebook. Justin has a post from Les Brown. Love Les Brown. Poverty sucks. There's another one just along that lines. That's a great quote. There's another quote from Gandhi, and he says, poverty is the worst form of violence. That's freaking deep. I agree with that 100%. So good quote. Thank you for sharing that. Good to see you tonight, Evo. Justin says 2020 has been his best year yet. I love that. That's awesome. I'm always extremely happy to see, like, out of my clients, they really didn't have a hard 2020. Like, 2020 was something they were equipped for. Bria, good to see you. Omar made it, guys. Justin is going to be expanding in Mexico. That's awesome. Bria has a really good question. You spoke about your life and family, remarkable, by the way. Can you describe how you're able to convey this to your family and friends and get them on board? So that's a good question. So Bria, to be honest, I have a lot of friends and family that still aren't on board, right? What I realized is that life is very subjective. And so at the end of the day, I'm not going to be able to get people on board. It's up to them, right? And so for me to convince somebody, is going to be temporary. It's like trying to motivate somebody. They're only going to be motivated for the minutes I'm talking to them. And then when I leave, whatever mental and spiritual condition they were in at the time that they were unmotivated is going to reappear and cause them to be that way again. So I realized I had to just lead by example. And over the years, I've had some friends and family reach out to me and say, hey, we see what you're doing and we're ready to change or help or be on board. And then I have some friends and family where they still, like, they won't talk to me about it. So, it's a very tough topic. Friends and family, we love them to death and care about them. But at the end of the day, they are their own person. And so there's not anything that we're going to be able to do to change them. They've got to make that change for themselves. And it's a decision. And it really comes from a place of being discontented enough with where I'm at to then decide I want to make a change. And I'm not in the business of making people discontented with their own decisions. And I found the more that I tried to ride that horse, the more antagonistic I made them feel. So what I ended up doing is just saying, hey, you know what? If you want to be broke and stuff, that's fine. I'm not going to mess with that or care about that. If they ever need help, I'm here. Right. And I'm going to keep doing what I do. And ultimately, I also kind of grew my own new friends and family. I have clients and people that I talk to today that are not related to me. I didn't grow up with them, but they get it and they're on board with it. So I hope that kind of answers it. It's not a one size fits all, fix all answer, but it is something where just keep doing your thing and leading by example. And your friends and family at some point will either catch on or they won't. And some will and some won't, but you'll impact enough people where, it'll be worth doing anyways. Brad says, never too young or old to learn about money, be a producer. True that. Chris, good to see you. Darren, good to see you. Chris, so my book will be out next week. We'll get the page out for that soon. I want to actually get it in hand first. So we're going to have it through publishing probably next week, and then I'll get the link out for you guys. So same with you, Marcy. Best books that I read on money. That's a great question. So Chris, the first one, and I'm going to tell Chris to read this. I don't think everyone should read this for their first book, but Chris, go read a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island. After you're done reading it, text me. I would love to know what your viewpoint is after reading that book. Anyone else listening, if you've not read other books on money and had some wins with money first, do not start with Creature from Jekyll Island. Okay, you will leave feeling depressed and a little bit down and out if you've not already had some easy layups and wins with money. I tell Chris to read that book because I know he'll be able to take it. If he hasn't already read it, he'll be able to take the information that's in there and take it in stride. That was one of the first books I read, and I was depressed for like a weekend. Like, it was just like, holy shit, I couldn't handle what was in that book. Sean, great to see you, man. Griffin, have you thought about going to Puerto Rico? Griffin, you're talking my language, man. That is definitely on the radar. Good. Let's see what else we have on Zoom here. Good to see everybody on Zoom. I freaking love how many of you guys are here on a Friday. I know I said that already, but like I say every weekend, like there's people on Fridays that they're going to party and drink and smoke weed or go to the club or go whatever. And then there's people that are like, no, I need to get my money right. And they're going to stay home on a Friday and learn. That's why we do these on Fridays. So I love and appreciate everyone that takes the time out of their Friday. Enrique asked ingenuity as in what ideas? Yeah, so ingenuity is, creating an idea and exchanging it with somebody, right? Because I laughed when I first was in business, like I had all these ideas, but I didn't do jack shit. I did not do anything, right? I was like telling all these, like all my friends, I have this idea and this idea and this idea and this idea. Now that I've been in business going on like a decade, I've realized that ideas are a dime a dozen. It's implementation that matters. I could have a crappy idea and do it, and that's better than having the brilliant idea and not do it. So ingenuity is in having a great idea, but then also following through on that idea and applying it and exchanging with somebody. Dave says, I wish I was smart as you at 28 years old. But I thought I knew everything. I could see that. Bayou, great to see you. Sharifa, thank you, Joe. I met you 2 years ago. You introduced me to Rachel to do my taxes for my business. I remember asking you, what is the simplest advice you can give me? And you said, save $50,000. It definitely sounds like me. 2 years later, 15,000, I'm on my way. I'm not giving up. I watch you to see if you are still in the game when I have my $50,000 later. Sharifa, that is incredible. I love that. For those of you that don't realize like the magnitude of that, like when I saved my first $10,000 or $15,000, for me personally, that was a huge deal to have that much money like put away. Like I'd had nobody in my close family that I knew of had done that. And so I was like that was a huge achievement. So I want to acknowledge Sharifa for actually doing that. Like that's a big deal. That's not something most people are doing. I think the average American savings balance right now is like less than $1,000. So that's giant. So great to hear that, Sharifa. That's awesome. Brian, great to see you. Yeah, that's so awesome. Let's see here. Enrique says, I'm producing money. What is enough to get an object as in real estate? So Enrique, the first thing I would say, same thing Sharifa just said, is get to 50 grand. Okay, get 50 grand. If you try and invest in real estate before 50 grand, what's going to happen is you're going to do a VA or an FHA fourplex or duplex or triplex or single family, and you're going to make no cash flow, and you're going to end up with a part-time construction, bookkeeping, conflict management, handyman, janitorial, everything in the world job, you name it. So get to 50,000. At 50,000, you can invest for real passive income. And at 50,000, if you're making an 8 to 10 or 12% return, you're making anywhere from $300 to $500 a month in passive income with no work. Versus if I do, an FHA fourplex, that's something where I'm going to have work. It's a job. I'm going to have tenants to manage, and I might make a couple $100 a month, but I'm probably going to end up losing money or breaking even. Enrique says, just like if you utilize a sacred account, you can avoid taxes. Yeah. So the sacred account, for those of you that are saving, saving money in the bank is a terrible idea. Terrible, 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 terrible idea. And if you don't know why, if you're on Wealth Dynamics University, log in and do some training on that. If you're not on Wealth Dynamics University, go sign up for a free trial. It's membership.jerryfetta.com. You can get a 14-day free trial. But it's important you understand that it's not just about what you keep. You've heard the phrase, it's not about what you make, it's what you keep. It's not just what you keep. It's also about where you keep it. So when you keep money in the sacred account, you are actually pulling yourself out of the banking system and pulling yourself out of the taxation system. And you're able to then become your own bank. So huge, huge to be able to do that. So on the money blueprint based on your life experience and others. Yeah, so the book, to answer Enrique's question, the book is based on my own experience, but also the research I've done on the top 1% of wealth. And so that's, where it came from. And that's why it's so effective. Like it's something that's worked for hundreds and hundreds of years. So we're not trying new things. We're not in the business of new inventions and silver bullet financial plans. Like we're going to look at, what did Rockefeller do? And what did Morgan do? What did Carnegie do? What did the Rothschilds do? And let's just do that, because they achieved wealth that has never been matched, even today in history. And they did it with that plan. So we're going to do the same thing. All right. I think we have a couple more questions on Facebook. Let's see here. What else we have on Facebook? Lots of questions. I know we're way over our time tonight. Thank you guys for hanging out and staying on. I don't mind at all that we're running a little bit late. This is what I do on my Fridays. Marcy says that when she reached out, she had 15K saved. True story. She was ready to invest. And we're like, no, keep saving and get to 50. And she just put in another 11,000 in her sacred account. That's awesome. Timothy asks, what is the most difficult part of financial freedom? I think you probably mean the most difficult part of getting there. I would say the most difficult part of getting there is not having a blueprint. Financial freedom, it's one of those things that we can all look at and recognize, like a house. That's why I use the idea of a blueprint. We can all look at a house and recognize it. And any single one of us could be like, oh yeah, they had to put a roof on it and they had to put a door and they had to put windows. And we can describe generally what the constructors had to do to build the house. Very few of us could actually go build one. Wealth is similar. We can all look at Donald Trump or Kanye West or Jeff Bezos or whoever it is, the billionaire, the millionaire that we're talking about. And we can all say, yeah, they did this and they did that, and they should do this and they should do that. But at the end of the day, like most of us aren't actually building what they're building. So the hardest part about getting there is not having a correct blueprint, which is why I wrote the book, because it's not magic. Like it is a very finite system that's been used over and over and over and over. And so I codified that in my book, and that's really the system to follow. And it just takes the guesswork out. And I've read so many financial books. I was talking about this the other day. Like most financial books that I read, either weren't truthful or they didn't provide clarity or they had no application. I couldn't then go implement the information I was learning. So in my book, what I did is I made sure, all of the information is truthful. Like this actually is real stuff that people use, right? Historically, I use it. My clients use it. These guys have used it. Second, it's clear. It's simple and easy to understand. It does not need to be complicated for it to be a good idea. And then thirdly, it actually gives you the action step of like, here's how you would go implement this. So that takes care of the biggest challenges, I would say. Sean says, currently saving because my sacred account is maxed out, but come February, I'll be going there. Sean, that is awesome. You can also put money in gold and silver, Sean, if you want to not put it in cash and you want to have it in an asset. That's what I do is when I max out my sacred account, I buy gold and silver. Right now, when the silver market crashed, I bought a bunch of it. So I just have boxes under my bed. But so no one come rob me, please. But you can keep it in gold and silver instead of just in cash. And that's a better bet. Griffin asks, for sacred account, if someone is overweight or has disqual for life insurance, what would be their solution? So what Griffin is saying, because the sacred account is life insurance, there are medical and financial qualifications. So if you're overweight or you have a bunch of medical history, usually you can't get insured. Also, if you've got like a criminal record or bankruptcies or drug usage, like those types of things, those are disqualifying factors. So if somebody is disqualified, basically is what Griffin is asking, what that would mean is they would need to insure somebody else. So you can still own a sacred account. It just has to be on your mom or your dad or your brother or your sister or your son or your daughter or your business partner. Somebody else would have to be the insured. Oh, thank you. Evo posted the link. So guys, if you're watching this, in a few minutes, the stream will end. And if you're like, man, this was freaking amazing, and I wish I had more information like this, you can get a free membership to Wealth Dynamics University. So if you go to the link that Edgar just posted, Evo just posted in the comments, it's membership.jerryfetta.com. You can get a free 14-day trial to Wealth Dynamics University. You can also just sign up. I think it's like $600 for the year, or you can do like $65 on a month-to-month deal. And we're actually adding more content into it. So there's literally hundreds of hours of financial content. I'm actually spending a few hours a day making more, so that there's just constantly, we want it to be like the financial university out there. Everyone should have this data, and it's not stuff you could go get at a university. So we're going to put it on Wealth Dynamics University instead. By the way, shout out to Evo. Last week, my microphone was backwards. So this little thing is to make it to where when I do the P noises, it doesn't go in the microphone. I had it on the back of my mic. So Evo nicely reached out to me, was like, hey, love you to death, bro. Killing it. Also, your mic was kind of backwards. You might want to flip that around next week. So thank you, Evo, for that. I greatly appreciate the extra help. All right, let me see if there's any more questions on Zoom before we wrap up here tonight. Josue says max out for sacred account is $19,500 per year. Josue, that's actually the 401k. Your sacred account has its own unique MEC limit or max out limit for the year. So we can get that to you. It's also on your online portal. If you log in, it'll tell you. So that's something you can check out. But yours is, I think yours is around that number, but we want to check. But 19.5 is actually for a 401k, not a sacred account. Matt says, looking forward to getting my money out of my bank into my sacred account. Matt, we've been working on yours, man. We're going to get this thing wrapped up though. Can you post the link here? Yeah, let me post the link for the free membership in Zoom. So membership.jerryfetta.com. I think I see a few more comments here. Enrique asks, why is 50,000 the go-to number for investing? So at 50,000, you can invest in something called a level 1 private placement. So a private placement means that I invest in a fund. So rather than me buying a property and managing the property and being a landlord, I just put money into a private fund, and that fund buys larger properties than I could personally afford to buy. So I've invested in mobile home parks and homeowners associations, storage facilities, like larger scale deals. And those funds require a minimum investment of 50,000. The other thing behind 50,000 is if you take a real estate development, whether that be like a commercial building or apartments, and you divide the price of the building by the units, typically it's going to be at least 50,000. So when you think about the math on that, like you want to actually have enough in there to like be a unit or more. So that's another reason why 50,000. And then also the big one behind 50,000 is enough money that someone will be afraid to lose it. Okay. When I'm investing $3,000 and $5,000 and $10,000, shit, I don't care. I can lose it and I'm fine because it was not that much money. When it's 50, all of a sudden my consideration goes up. I'm like, oh crap, this took a long time to get to. I don't want to invest in just anything. So I'm going to be more diligent in researching the deal and knowing about the deal and understanding where I'm putting the money, because 50,000, if I lose that, that's a hit. A lot of these guys that do the little 5 or 0 down or the $10,000 down deals, they're not investing enough skin in the game to actually feel like they're at risk. So they'll put it in anything. They'll try and get rich quick. They'll try and gamble. They'll put it into Forex. They'll buy, shitty little apartment complexes that they think they're going to flip, whatever it might be. But it's not real investing, right? So those are my big 3 reasons behind 50,000. So I think that answers that question. Let me just make sure there's no more questions here. Yep, I think that covers it, guys. So, guys, thank you all for joining tonight. I know we went over, but I love seeing everybody on here. We'll be back again next week. If you have any questions, reach out to me. You can always direct message me and my team. You can email me. If you're a client and you have questions, you can text me. My communication lines are always open. And tune in again next week. By the way, if this was on here, able to see this stuff, then you can share it with them too. So ask if ever become a client of ours, share the stream so that other people can get this data and this knowledge. I'm going to go and tune out. Thank you all for watching. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe.